I'm delighted to be sitting here in what is Optus Stadium with Vice Admiral retired Shekhar Sinha, who after a distinguished 42-year career with India's Navy, did something that you're going to have to explain to me in a minute, swallowed the anchor, retired in 2014. Admiral Sinha is an aviator. He flew off of all three of India's aircraft carriers, commanded 4 different ships, and ended a very stellar career as commander of India's Western Command. And today he is with us here in Western Australia for the first ever Indian Ocean Defense and Security Conference. And just after lunch today, he will be one of our keynote speakers. And I thought it would be magnificent. We sat down and just had a broader conversation. So welcome to Western Australia. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Professor Gordon. I think I'm delighted to be here. And as you mentioned that I was in command of the Navy, so I'm in Western Australia. I do find a lot of simile as far as thinking is concerned. We are all Western, so that is one. But yes, this is my first visit to Australia, and certainly first visit to Perth, obviously. But it has been a extremely useful, enriching conversation for last 2 days, and I'm looking forward to some more today.
So first things first, swallowing the anchor. Is that an Indian naval phrasing, or is that kind of ubiquitous for navies around the world?
Yeah, it's navies around the world, Gordon. The navies are very traditional, and most of it has come from Royal Navy because we were brought up during the Royal Navy time, and most of our customs and traditions are still more British than the British themselves. Swallowing the anchor is basically a retirement, that you have retired.
Well, you clearly haven't retired. You're very active in the foreign policy think tank community, a member, a trustee of the India Foundation, a very important organization, the Institute for Defense and Security Analysis, an organization we partnered with. And again, we're really fortunate to have you here today, so thank you. Let me start off. We have just celebrated the 75th anniversary of the founding of India, and at the same time, the 75th anniversary of Australia's relationship with India. Just last week, I had an opportunity to visit with some of your former colleagues. The INSV Sumedha visited a port call here in Fremantle. I wonder if you might reflect on the Australia-India relationship, not just for the last 75 years, but going forward. A very important anniversary. What are the prospects for Australia-India relations for the next 75 years, if we look that far ahead?
Well, Gordon, I was quite surprised that it was not as good as it has happened in the last 4 or 5 years. It's suddenly shot up, with the previous regime here, the previous Prime Minister. And we found that within no time, the 2 Prime Ministers sat down, they signed a 2+2 agreement. They talked about free trade agreement and a whole lot. And I think there is only one way to go in this relationship, and that is north. You have to go up, because we haven't had very strong bonds as far as the economy is concerned, as far as the trade is concerned, and we have missed out on those a lot. And I think that we have great opportunity, as far as trade, commerce, defense is concerned. Defense is, of course. Second one, which is important one, is the education. And I think it is in education and science and technology sector that India can learn a lot. India can gain a lot by very good close equation with Australian universities, Australian think tanks. And I think that having a bilateral with think tanks is something that we should have done yesterday. And now that Australia is part of Quad, now you're heading for AUKUS. We are part of Indo-Pacific. The threats are very similar, and I think that it is time for people like us in the think tanks to make policy recommendations to our respective governments.
Oh, thank you. Your reference to the Quad is a perfect segue into my next question. Australia and India have had a growing bilateral strategic relationship. And last year, an interim free trade agreement, as you mentioned, tremendous education ties, people-to-people ties. There are now over 800,000, nearly 900,000 Indian Australians out of a population of 25 million. That's a fair bunch. But one area where the cooperation has expanded most dramatically has been in the military-to-military space. And the Quad, while it's not focused on the military, at least at this iteration, the leaders level, started out as a quadrilateral security dialogue. And there has been an intense focus among the navies of Australia, Japan, the United States, and India on the South Pacific, on the South China Seas, there's been a lot less conversation about the Indian Ocean. And that's the topic of our conference today. So maybe a tiny preview of your keynote speech. What do you think is the future for Australia-India cooperation, or a broader role for the Quad in the Indian Ocean as opposed to the Pacific?
I think it's quite a lot. Indian Ocean has remained relatively unexplored as far as the Quad countries are concerned. There has been more of China, to be very honest, like they are everywhere. But I think the capability gaps within the Indian Ocean littorals is quite significant. And apart from building our own capacity and capability, it is incumbent on our part to build the capacities and capabilities of the smaller countries who cannot afford it on their own. And I think that is where Australia's sort of talent, Australia's ability to manufacture science and technology, a great deal. But only one word of sort of caution is that whenever, let us say, the Indians want to do something in the Pacific Islands, it should be in complete cohesion with the Quad members. Otherwise, possibly the smaller countries, they have this hedging is a policy which you cannot deny. And you will find that very similar items that the two countries are supplying to them, duplicating the whole effort. Similarly, when Australia comes and makes some assistance to the smaller countries in the Indian Ocean littoral, it should be completely with the knowledge of the Indians and the Japanese. That way, it will be, shall I say, measured exploitation, measured building of capacity to those people, so that they can take care of themselves.
Oh, spectacular. The Western Command, which you commanded, obviously encompasses the western part of the Indian Ocean, which we haven't focused on enough. For many in Australia, and in fact, for the Perth US Asia Center, for most of our 9 years, the Indo-Pacific kind of went from Japan to India. But increasingly there is focus on the east coast of Africa, that western part of the Indian Ocean. So are there any particular developments in there that you think Australians should be paying more attention to based on your experience as commander of the Western Command, either in Africa or the other island nations along the western part of the Indian Ocean?
You got it absolutely right. For Africa, all of us have to make a lot of effort because we have neglected Africa for many years, including India. And of course the US. I mean, it is amazing that the US Africa Command is based in Germany. People are not even there in that country. So that is the sense of ignorance that I get. But we have made reasonable progress in our interaction with the African countries. The Prime Minister has held a meeting with the African ANUs, and a lot of education, military, shall I say, skill training, those kind of things are being done for virtually all countries in Africa right now. But we have lost out on time. The lead has been taken by somebody who's outside Quad, and you know which country I'm talking about. And I think that to displace this, that will not happen because it is fairly deep rooted as far as China is concerned. What we can do is, without expecting anything in return, let us give our goodwill by training them, possibly half of them free of cost, education, medical healthcare, build sort of infrastructure in those countries, and you will find that at the end of the day, when they take a call, a military call, this will be always at the back of mind. Hey, come on, Australia is a very helpful country. They have been here. Indians are good to us. Let's not do something which will harm their security interests. So I think that there is a lot of scope, and as far as that part is concerned. Coming to northern part of the, that Western Indian Ocean, which means the Arabian Sea, there's quite a messy area. On an average, what I found at that time, at least 30 to 34 countries' warships are floating around at any given time. And the justification is that the energy resources are there. People have China's 80%, South Korea's 70%, Japan's 40%, India's 80%. They all come from that area. And these are the fourth largest growing economies of the world. And therefore, there is a risk that, if you leave it alone and there are traditional, non-traditional threats, as the Indonesian speaker spoke, and I probably will also make a passing mention, that your presence is valid. But unfortunately, it also gives validity to many other countries who are not there for the protection of the sea lanes. So that is what we have to be aware. And that I think that the Quad and Malabar sort of partners, they are fully familiar with this. More exercises in that area can deter. If you say the APAC region, the whole terrorism, it's a hub of terrorism in the world. And it's the number of cases where it has actually slipped into the sea. I mean, we had Mumbai attack. We had one in Gulf of Aden where the first sort of terrorist activity started. Well, the one destroyer was sort of destroyed completely by a remote control board. So I think there is a lot happening, and I think there's a lot of areas where at least as a Quad country, as a Malabar, we can contribute a lot to stability and peace in that area.
Oh, thank you. One final question. You've already sat through a full day of this Indian Ocean Defense and Security Conference, and again, you're speaking keynote speech right after lunch. You will have noticed this intense interest in India, both from the AUKUS thing we did a couple days ago and the roundtable we had. I think it's pretty safe to say whether it is, as you mentioned, the east coast of Africa, whether it is Southeast Asia, whether it's South Pacific, whether they're Quad members, they all kind of want more India. I'd like to kind of ask you finally, having been in Australia, I understand this is your first visit, which is shocking. It will not be your last. We'll have you back here very soon. But I'd like to get your assessment as what India would like more from Australia. You've heard a lot from industry, from military leaders, from political leaders. What do you think Australia should be doing more to take advantage of our growing relationship with India, particularly in the Indian Ocean?
I will just keep away from operations for a minute. What I've been hearing the discussion for last 2 days, and particularly this morning, supply chain, manufacturing. No one country can ensure the security and all indigenous equipment in their own land. It's not possible. And Quad provides us the opportunity to do it together. You can source many things which you need, either in the vice versa. The Indians can source many things which are built here, but certainly there are a large number of items, particularly in the defense sector, the components, which are common, interoperability, interchangeability, that's going to work in our favor. For example, the Boeing 737 and P8I, we do the entire servicing in our own country. There is an MRO which has been created in Nagpur. Just the other day, one US Navy ship has docked in Indian port for its refit. This is the first time. So there are opportunities, and I think that we should make use of it. Main thing is trust. The first thing in any defense cooperation or this kind of cooperation is really trust. And now that we are in one group, democracy is English speaking, a fair amount of defense technical education exchange. I think that we have to take it to the next level. Wherever there is an opportunity, build that trust. I was talking to Brigadier Brett. He's done National Defense College in India. And he had so much to say. In fact, yesterday he was telling me that I don't know why can't we source things from there? Why can't we get the skilled people from there? I said, yeah, they're coming. Nobody has been stopped from getting a work visa in Australia, not to my knowledge. So use the manpower, the skilled manpower, to develop your industry, particularly the medium and small enterprises who can make the logistic support, the supply chain within the country. So that's one big thing. And similarly, as I said, India can learn a lot by your investment in infrastructure. You're very good. Quality, then education, as you said, healthcare. Yeah. Lot of work can be done. So I think that there is a lot. In fact, it is just the beginning.
Well, it is the beginning, and your focus on trust is well placed. And trust tends to flow from understanding.
Yeah.
And so there are 650 people waiting to hear you speak. Your reference to Brigadier Brett Challoner, who is the commander of the 13th
Yes,
Brigade here,
yes.
a very important part of the community
Yeah.
here. I similarly was delighted to know that he had graduated from India's Higher Defense College. And that type of understanding, your visit, your remarks today will help us build that trust. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me here.
My
Gordon.
pleasure. Thanks.
Take care.